October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. It's Abs of October Red, and guess what? It's news and reviews. We haven't done one of these for a minute. First of all, a warm welcome to you guys. Apologies I didn't do a watch along last night. There's a lot of pay-per-views coming up, and I've really got to be picky and choosy about what I'm going to watch on pay-per-view. But fortunately for me, chilled out last night and with friends and watched the boxing somewhere else, which obviously I can't do a watch along with, but I was doing updates on Twitter. Guess we should get into it really. There's lots of mixed emotions this morning, but we're going to cover it, but we're going to cover some other stuff as well, because we've got some real boxing business to get into. As you know, I love the boxing business side of stuff. It's not all about the fights, there's so much involved in boxing. There's been some big headlines, sanctioning body clash brewing behind the scenes, promotional shifts, and the continued rise of new contenders. One of the things that I want to talk about is the WBA versus the IBA Pro conflict. As you know, I had Al Siesta on the channel the other day because Kubrat Pulev versus Murat Gassiev, courtesy of IBA Pro, was announced to be taking part, I think it's in December, in Dubai. So I thought, oh, let's talk about this. And I brought up, kind of touched on slightly, but what about, I thought the WBA had ordered him to fight Moses Itauma, and he said it was a clerical error. But once this fight is over, we hope to make the Gassiev, because he's banking on Gassiev winning, we hope to make Gassiev Itauma. So I thought, okay, didn't really probe him on it. In hindsight, I probably should have done. But the fight's officially announced, it's announced. And then I thought, let me have a little scour on the internet. And I found the conversation that Umar from Box Nation had with Frank Warren. And he was like, basically, if that fight goes ahead, there's going to be some issues because the WBA have, in fact, ordered the fight between Kubrat Pulev and Moses Itauma. And that was the fight we should have expected to happen, December in Manchester. It's been spoken about for ages. I'm going to get on to December in Manchester, or wherever it's going to be in a bit anyway. So I'm not too sure about what is going on with that. So the WBA officially ordered Pulev to defend his WBA regular heavyweight title against Moses Itauma, who we know is a rising British contender, giving both parties a negotiation window. Yep, that was what it was. It was there, it was ordered. But almost simultaneously, and like I said, this is why I got Al Siesta on the channel, IBA Pro announced Pulev versus Murat Gassiev for December the 12th in Dubai. That's a voluntary defence, not the ordered fight. So that's where the confusion went, and Al Siesta didn't just come on my channel. I believe he went on TalkSport with it as well. They picked up the story after I picked it up first. The WBA has not sanctioned Pulev versus Gassiev. I think that was more of a voluntary. So we've got a couple of questions here. Will the WBA strip Pulev if he bypasses Itauma? Will they reschedule Itauma for early 2026? In other words, they let that fight happen and he fights Itauma later. Could there be a behind the scenes agreement? I'm not sure, because Frank Warren didn't seem too happy about it, and quite rightly so. If it's been ordered, then you get this. It's like, hold on a minute, what is actually the truth? And you can put it like this, we're looking at Itauma, somebody that came out fighting very regularly, getting the opponents in there. Last one was Dillian, got him out there sharpish, and it's like, okay, let's progress on now, moving him up the rankings, getting him ready for a world title shot. So you could put that it's a bit of a setback for young Moses. 20-year-old was in line for his first world title shot, and now that timeline's been pushed back, potentially till 2026. Textbook case of sanctioning body versus promotional control, if you want to look at it like that, and then depending on how it plays out, it could define how much power the WBA really has over its champions. The confusion needs to be cleared up before legal letters start going in. If a fight is ordered to happen, not after Pulev fights somebody else, but the fight is ordered to happen next, then the WBA should honour their word and that fight happens. I don't know which part of that ended up in a fight being announced officially from IBA Pro for Pulev to now face Gassiev. All very strange indeed, and it really does need clearing up because it's extremely confusing. Especially for us as the viewers thinking, well, who's actually fighting who? I'll do some digging around that, see what I can find, and if there's anything new on that, I'll obviously let you guys know in another news and reviews. Last night then, it was Saturday, October the 25th, when the clocks went back. The card last night is raised eyebrows. There was arguments over pay-per-view. Like I said, I chose to not do it. I was going to do a watch along. Could have gone to the fight, whatever, but I'm glad I actually stayed in Birmingham and managed to watch the fight somewhere else. There was about 11 fights on that card. There was a lot of fights. The card started early, and the fights that I did watch, I'm going to be honest with you, was the Quartermain Smith, Royston Barney Smith fight, which was very, very one-sided, and those belts were literally just given straight to Royston Barney Smith. So we'll see. I like Royston Barney Smith's style, to be honest, but I think he's got holes. He is young. He's got time to close those holes up, but he can be vulnerable at some times in the ring. But they'll tighten that up, as we can see with that team in relation to tightening things up. We can go on to the main event in a bit. Obviously, the other fight that had interest in was Ezra Taylor versus Steed Woodall, and I knew the fight was going to be competitive because I know that Steed Woodall is a good boxer. The way Callum Smith dispatched him at super middle was something else, and I know for a fact, and I'm just thinking, if it was me or if I was competitive, I'd want to get him out there in a better fashion because it proves a point. Yes, I understand Steed went from super middle up to light heavy. I know he was a last minute opponent, but he was getting ready for a fight. He took this fight, so it's not like he wasn't in camp. He was ready for a fight. Yes, short notice with both of them, because I don't believe that they've sparred before, so you can look at it on a short notice basis for both of them. Ezra Taylor, over the past, I've watched him, practically since his debut, before his debut, and I've saw him improve under Malik Scott. Definitely improved. I saw a more composed, a fighter that was using his jab better. However, what I will say, still needs improvement on his head movement. He does take a lot of shots, but he's taking less shots than he was before, trust me, because he was slipping and, pulling back, but not necessarily countering with the pullback, which I would have liked to have seen. But he's definitely improved as a boxer. One of the things that I believe that he could have used more in this fight was the use of the hook. He did dip down to the body, signature kind of Canelo side, leaning in, holding the right hand on your chin to protect any counter and dipping in for the body shots. But when you got throw to the body, throw to the head after. Maybe, I'm not saying that he's admiring his work, but I just needed, almost like he needed to finish what he'd started, finish the combinations, because Steed was coming back with very good put together shots. I believe they both had a cut as well on the eyes. Both of them did. Not from head clashes, from punches, I believe. Good fight. And it was, it did become apparent that obviously the shots, Ezra's powerful. The shots were starting to get to Steed, and he was starting to fade till eventually, obviously, he got the stoppage in the later rounds. Good fight. Definitely the best name that he's had on his resume so far. I spoke to Lee Eaton and Ruth, ringside with Ruth. I think it was a Thursday, the press conference, and we spoke about potential fights for Ezra, and they were saying, we'd like to make the Ben Whittaker fight. That's a good, not that we'd like to make it, that it's a good fight to make next with Ezra. A good fight for the both of them. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to put a clip out on Instagram where I speak about Ben Whittaker and what's going to happen with his career. How, because I suggested, and it's going off on a tangent here a bit, I suggested that I'd like to see Ben Whittaker fight Joshua Buatsi, which everybody gasped and looked at me like I was insane. But the reason why I said that, I remember when Eddie Hearn signed Galal Yafai, he fought for the silver WBC, and his first fight was a 10-rounder. He was an Olympic medalist, albeit gold, but he was treated as such. And young Galal has not been in any easy fights from the start of his career. He's not been in necessarily pick-me fights. He's been put in some good fights. So I was saying extend the courtesy for your other fighters, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Queensbury were quite adamant that they'd probably never take a fight with Joshua Buatsi next, but we'll see. We'll see. A fight for the future for sure, but hopefully not too late in the future, because, as you know, we all age. So anyway, back to Ezra Taylor. Congratulations on his win. He's definitely improving under Malik. It's a good partnership. Just work a little bit more on that head movement. You've got the power. A bit more punch selection, variation, and he'll be a solid all-round, really good fighter. But the key thing is getting better. He's not regressed, because you've seen fighters go to certain trainers and they've regressed, or they become stagnant and they're stuck not even in a particular style, but they just don't seem to be getting better. We're not seeing that. So congratulations to the both of those guys, and commiserations to Steed Woodall, fellow Brummie, that didn't make it out this time. I went to the press conference, obviously, as you know, for Parker Wardley. Thursday, went down to London. Very expensive day, and I didn't end up getting any of the fighters. I did air my views on this. I weren't too happy, and quite selfishly. I tried to get Frank Warren on a 1-to-1. That didn't happen. They suggested a scrum, and I said, nah, not doing that. That's down to me. It's a choice that I made, so I have to take accountability. But I did try and get the fighters, not necessarily Fabio. I wanted to speak to Parker, and you're going to think, oh yeah, you would say that now. But one of the reasons that I did want to speak to Parker was to ask him if he is overlooking Wardley. I've been one of these people that have not necessarily backed Wardley 100% in fights, and every single fight that he's had, I've had to eat my words. And it's not me being disrespectful to Wardley, it's me looking at who he's boxed with, his style of boxing, etc., as I know that most of you have. But as Wardley's gone through his career, I've paused with that opinion, and I said, I ain't writing him off. I can't write him off, because he finds a way to win. He might not be the better boxer if you're going to look at it like that, but he finds a way to win. And I've said that, and I've said it publicly. I spoke to his team, Michael Offo, his manager, and obviously Dean Whyte was there as well. And Michael was very clear to me, because I was like, boxing IQ, pedigree, this and that. And he was like, it doesn't matter. He's been in with guys that have had like that amateur pedigree, and he's got them out of there. The fighter with the best IQ is the one that wins the fight, and that's kind of how that conversation was left. So Fabio started, both of them to be fair, and even Parker, started quite quickly. It was an explosive fight. We had some really good exchanges in there. But what I will say is Fabio was boxing. And I almost had to question myself, ladies and gentlemen. Am I one of these that was underrating the fact that Fabio could actually box better than I thought? Because I'm going off Justice Honey. Justice Honey was picking him apart. And he was picking him apart as the fight was going on. Obviously, we know how that fight ended. So it's almost like that last fight that boxers have. That's the fight that sticks in your head, and you kind of summarize all of their career based on that last fight. And when you deep it, when you really look at it, that's quite pathetic. And this is some accountability and feedback for myself to literally go through the fighters' fights. You watch these fights and have this kind of collage of what they do well and what they don't do as well, instead of basing their performance solely on their last fight. Can't do that, because I saw Fabio go in there and box. He was boxing, he was countering, he was slipping, he was putting his combinations together well. When it started to get sticky, he started to fight. Then he'd come out, then he'd start boxing. We know Parker's style. We've seen what he can do. We know that Parker can be dropped, but we know that he gets back up. We know that he's a counter puncher, that he's now a front foot fighter since he's gone with Andy Lee. We know what Parker's capable of. I'm going through the different fights that he's had, and he, in my opinion, has improved under Andy Lee. So what went wrong here? And this is my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, and I know what you like. You come, just be honest in the comments, because I'm always going to give you my honest opinion. I solemnly believe that Joseph Parker overlooked him. I believe that Joseph Parker, I wouldn't say he didn't prepare. He prepared, but in the fight he didn't expect that Fabio, because like me, like a lot of the fans, pedigree, amateur experience, who he's been with, the last few successful fights he's had. Does Fabio really box? Is he just relying on punching power? Joseph Parker knows that he can get put down, but he can get back up, etc, etc, etc. Only Joseph Parker will know the truth. But for me, looking at it, knowing what I do know with the fights that I have been watching over how many years, I just think he overlooked him. And this is not to take away absolutely any credit from Fabio and what he achieved. You can argue about the stoppage in the comments. I'm not going to get into that. Fabio was boxing. It was a competitive fight. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, he was down on the cards and this and this. You know me, I don't do scoring, but I'm watching the fight for what it is. It was competitive. The last few moments of that fight, they were both tired, Just as Parker started to throw back, that's when the ref jumped in. Like I said, you can argue all you want in the comments, but what I will say is that you can't write Fabio off. He's got determination, and it's almost like every time people underestimate him as a boxer, not a fighter, because we know he can scrap. As a boxer, he has to prove us wrong. And I like that in him, and I don't want him to lose that, because that will take him very far, because it's almost like he reacts in a positive way to the negative comments that come from us, the fans. I saw boxing, I saw movements, he's always been a bit slight on his feet anyway, so I can't say improvement with his feet, but just his boxing. But I tell you something, I spoke to Fabio after he beat David Adelaide. I can't remember which press conference it was. It was one of the Riyadh ones that was in London. And he told me, I said, what was the plan with that? And he said he downloaded information from David Adelaide in the first couple of rounds, seeing what he reacts to. The interviews there, it's on my page further down, because I've done a few. And he said that's how he knew what to do with him. And this is a conversation that I've had with Fabio, but yet still I have questioned his IQ. Is that not using IQ? So even though, like I said, his past few fights, I says, I'm not writing this geezer off. There's absolutely no way I'm doing that. He continues to prove why. And now look at him. You know, obviously there's a lot of talk about premature stoppage, exact this, that and the other. I get that. And yeah, could Parker have landed that equalising shot and got him out of there? Parker was landing some clean shots and Fabio was shaking them off and coming back in. There was times when I thought, oh my God, this is it. And it never happened. It was a good fight, you know. And like I said, you guys can argue in the comments about stoppage. I'm not arguing. It was a competitive fight. And it was definitely a good watch. Definitely. I don't know. Parker said in an interview that he's not going to be happy with the stoppage because he just started to throw back. He wasn't, and then he did, and then the ref pulled in. I don't know. I'm not in the ring, so I can't see what Joseph Parker's eyes look like. Well, if he's looking dazed, glazed, whatever it is that the referees look at for their safety concerns. I know everyone's like, oh, look at it, it's Howard Foster again. You know, quite a few people have said that. But look, it's down to the ref. I've seen worse stoppages than that when it comes to early, and I've always been quite vocal about them. So I'll let you guys make the assumption that I didn't think that it was. I thought it was stopped at the right time, but like I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm not a referee, I'm not a judge, I'm a boxing fan, and just like you guys, I've got an opinion. So it was a 11th round TKO over Joseph Parker at the O2 in London. So Wardley's now become the WBO interim heavyweight champion and mandatory challenger for Alexander Usyk, who he called out after the fight. Parker, who was, you know, reportedly ahead on the cards, felt stoppage was premature and has already called for a rematch. So this is his post-fight interviews that he's had. Such a gentleman, an amazing man, Joseph Parker. Spoke to him several times on camera. He's definitely one of the nice guys in boxing, and he's skilled as well. Really nice guy, former world champion. You know, I always will say congratulations to the winner, but commiserations, because when there's a winner, there's always a loser. So the win has elevated Wardley's stock dramatically, but it's also stirred a debate around officiating in big fights. It's always been an argument, hasn't it? I don't think anything's changed there. And for Parker, it's not the end. He's clear, I was fine, and he wants to run it back. I wonder if they will run it back. Who knows? Because if you think about it, Parker was in a millimeters distance of fighting Usyk. Now all of that seems to have just fizzled off. Can you imagine how he's going to wake up and what he's going to be thinking this morning? You know, I think, look, I think I'd actually be crying waking up this morning. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens with that. And finally then, I'm going to talk about Lawrence Okolie. He's fighting in Nigeria. I really like the look of the card. You've got Okolie, Adelaide Odeazi, I think it's De Freitas, and there's another one on there. Beg your pardon for not remembering his name. I haven't got the card in front of me. I like the card. I like the look of it. You know, the way that they're dressed, their faces. I like the presentation. But who is Lawrence Okolie going to be fighting? I'm not going to comment on the rest of the fighters. You've got to look at Lawrence Okolie's positioning. Yeah? Lawrence Okolie is ranked very high in the division. The WBC is number 1, number 4 with the WBO, top 15 with the IBF. So it's a big homecoming moment. We saw them out there for the previous fight. It's obviously promoted by Amir Khan in partnership with Queensbury, etc, etc. All the lists on there. So it's December the 19th and he's headlining. So when we look at it, who's he going to be fighting? Because it's great that he's fighting. He's coming back off a bicep injury that he had in his last fight at was it Tottenham? Was it Wembley? I think it was Wembley. It was on the Usyk Dubois card. Usyk Dubois 2. Tore his bicep. Straight back in it. Lovely guy. But let's be honest. He should be fighting a credible top 10 contender. Don't want to hear about any more stay busy fights. You've heard me here moan about Richard Riakporhe on who he's fighting. When I said, look at what they're doing with Jordan Thompson, with one of the Paro brothers, and that's his first fight at heavyweight after having 2 years off. So I don't want to hear about, and this is no slight on the the opponent, but Okolie needs to be fighting someone top 15. Yeah. So scour down those lists, see who's on there, and hopefully it's one of them. Because yes, he's come off a bicep injury. He's had 2 fights at heavyweight now. Come on, you got to up the game. So I can't criticise one and not criticise the other. So I hope I get silenced when the opponent's name is read out. I don't want it to be a showcase card. I want it to be a card that's actually challenging. You know? So that's just my opinion on it. I don't want the card to just be about building the brand. Look at these guys here. It should be about him climbing the ladder, getting closer to those world title shots, really testing himself at heavyweight. It has to be a meaningful fight. It has to be. So, just to wrap it up then, we've got a potential sanctioning storm between the WBA and the IBA Pro over Pulev's next move. Wardley's definitely shaking up the heavyweight picture. Chisora and Whyte, their trilogy, they were together as well on Saturday. Dillian looks like he didn't want to have much of a conversation. He just wants to get the fight done and get on with it. I like that fight. I've always said I want to see the trilogy. I don't mind. And I think, if I'm going to be honest, potentially it should be the final fight for both of them. So there's a lot of things that are going on in boxing, heavyweight boxing. UK once again in the spotlight, and I like to see that, because sometimes we get things taken away from us. So it's nice to see that we're talking about things that are happening with the UK. So let me know what you think, guys. This is just a news and reviews, quick boxing talk for your Sunday afternoon. Like I said, I do appreciate you guys listening in, putting your comments down, being honest, saying what you feel. I like that. I've got some fantastic subscribers and I appreciate each and every one of you. Even if you're just here to watch me flop, I appreciate it, because all views are good views, right? So enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will be coming out with more alternative corner stuff. Any boxing news that pops up, I'll be looking into that as well. You know that we're covering quite a lot of topics on the alternative corner. And remember that the week coming is fight week for Joshua Buatsi versus Zach Parker. So that's back up in Manchester. I will be attending the press conference for that. Probably the fight night, but if I don't, I'll definitely be doing a watch along, because guess what? That isn't pay-per-view, even though I believe DAZN had a clerical error and put that it pay for this fight now, and somebody was like, what? That was all on Twitter last night. Such an exciting place Twitter is. So yeah, I'm going to leave you to it. Things to do Sunday afternoon and all that. And as we say, oh gosh, how dare I? Got to shout out my sponsors. SA UK, maximum security, minimum fuss. And as we say at October Red, stay ready.
October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.